Here are some tips when it comes down to safe contact in sport and just other overall tips when it comes to actually playing the game. Now, these will all depend on the sport you play, but we're going to talk a little bit more about contact sports. So, starting it off, football, rugby, different sports where you tackle each other. Number one is tackling in a safe way. So, this means without using your head. You don't want to use your head in contact. You want to avoid it as much as you can, especially not going head on head with another player. General rule of thumb for football tackling is getting low, wrapping the legs, and keeping your head out of contact. If you're running from beside somebody, you're catching up of like a side view tackle. You don't want to get your head across their body. You just want to make contact with your near shoulder to keep your head out of it the best you can. As we know, if heads get hit, that'll lead to concussions and more serious injuries. So we want to keep our head out of contact as much as we can. Another tip when it comes to tackling is that you can't play with hesitation or fear. When you're going into a tackle, if you're scared because the other athlete is big and you're scared to get hurt, you're scared anything's going to happen, you end up stopping your feet, you stop moving, they just run into you, and it's a bigger collision. It'll end up hurting more. When you play with no hesitation, when you go as fast as you can, 100 miles per hour, you'll be surprised. It actually doesn't usually hurt. Now, when you hesitate, take your time, when you're scared, that's when you end up getting hurt. So you have to just be fully committed to the play, go with no hesitation, and just go make a play. Another tip when it comes to tackling is when you're going in, if you're diving to make a tackle, don't lead in with your arms like this, because if it hits someone's helmet, if it hits a kneecap, something that's really hard, it could damage your arm. And we'll say the last tip for in terms of tackling is not to fly into any unnecessary contact. Now, if you're looking to make some more plays, then yeah, you'll be diving into piles and doing all of that. But in terms of staying healthy, it makes more sense not to dive into plays late. If they're already being tackled, just go for the ball, or whatever sport it applies to. If you don't have to make the contact, then don't make it. That will help you keep healthy, help minimize injuries of you getting hit. To take another angle on this sport tips, it is to not reach when you're making cuts. So you'll see receivers, if they're running, they reach their feet too far out in front of them, then they land on their heels. It's a big impact. Sometimes their knees collapse, and this is just more likely to get injured, also more likely that you'll slip. So you have to run. Just think about sinking down at the hips, sitting in a chair, bringing your chin down towards your knees to drop the chest as well, and keeping your feet in your frame. When your feet get too far outside your frame in any direction, but especially forwards on cuts, then you're just putting yourself in a more dangerous position. Third tip of this is to keep your head on a swivel. So lots of sports, there's lots of pieces moving around, especially team sports like football or rugby. So just keep your head on a swivel, which means you're having your head move, not literally the whole play. But sometimes if you're looking at special teams in football, especially kickoff, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of bodies flying all over the place. So you have to keep your eyes open and make sure nobody's coming to blow you up and nobody's coming to, somebody might fall into you late, especially when you are around piles. So if there's a fumble, there's a tackle, there's a lot of guys around, keep your head on a swivel. Try to avoid being close to the piles, because that's where a lot of the dirty plays happen in football. Refs have too much to see, they won't see it. Somebody might come hit you late around the pile. So keep your head on a swivel and avoid your piles, because these are situations where sometimes people get extra hits in or they play it dirty. Next tip is just to keep your proper equipment. So have your chin strap done up. I've seen way too many helmets pop off. Have your mouth guard in, your helmet done up, chin straps on tight. If you're playing 7-on-7 or something where you have a lighter helmet, make sure you're wearing it properly. and then all your pads are in place. Shoulder pads are done up. If it's soccer, your shin guards, whatever you have, just make sure you're using the equipment properly. Now, I don't think everything has a great purpose, such as knee pads in football. They don't cover that much area, but you might as well just keep them there, because if you happen to get hit in the one spot, you would prefer to have protection there than not. It's not always just about swag. Next is talking about serious injury protocol. So if you get hurt, then sit, let the trainer see you, take a look. Especially if it's a head injury, you don't want to mess around with this. You don't want to mess around with future CTE or get multiple concussions. You could think of probably some examples that come to mind. And as athletes, there'll be lots of pressure to go back in the game. Obviously, you want to go in, help your team win. But if you are risking the health, especially of your head, then you are just going to end up harming your team in the long run. If you end up getting re-injured, and it will end up being worse than something that you could have sat for a little bit and get back in there. Last point of this section is to be smart with other activities to stay safe. So if you're playing some basketball, maybe not go too hard, maybe not jump up for all the rebounds. Some NFL contracts, they have in it that you aren't allowed to do dangerous activities such as skydiving too close to the season. You have to just think of ways that you could get hurt and try to avoid them. So if it's basketball, I've seen multiple teammates of mine who have biked to practice and have gotten hit by cars. So anything to do in your life, any type of activity, always try to stay safe. If it's biking, longboarding, you're playing basketball, maybe don't play something like paintball too close to the season if a ball hits you in the wrong spot. Just always think about staying safe, staying healthy. So just to sum up these tips: safe tackling without your head, don't go across the body, don't tackle with hesitation or lead with your arms up in front. Also, don't fly into unnecessary contact. When you're cutting, don't reach on your cuts, just sink down, keep your feet in your frame, keep your head on a swivel, and avoid big piles, especially for a football example in special teams or in situations in your sport where players get a little bit more dirty. I've never played rugby, but maybe in a scrum, some things happen in there and people try to take some cheap shots. So just always be aware of these situations. Always wear your proper equipment. Take your injury protocol seriously if something gets hurt, and then stay smart, stay safe outside of your sport when doing any kind of activities.